Yeah, but no, that's one of the things that granted, I get the, hey, nice sermon, pastor, or, whatever. And
all your buttons were buttoned correctly. Good job.
Yeah, good job.
Your little stole was
my
not
stole was
crooked.
straight. And, I think for me, though, like I've mentioned to you before, Belinda, I have no idea if anybody reads the pastor's piece in the epistle.
Yeah.
Zero.
Really, somebody please give him some feedback on the pastor's piece in the epistle. It's coming out next week.
Yeah.
The February one. Did you write one?
It's
And then you didn't know. That'd be perfect.
I was just going to do Happy Groundhog Day, but then, and then do that again in March, and then,
and then see how long that carries.
That's right.
See if anybody notices.
Right,
Or you put in the first line, like they do in if you read the instructions thing.
Yeah.
Where, just go to the bottom and sign your name.
Right, and you get an A.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah.
That, and I know a few people read the article in the Woodsboro Walkersville Journal, because I did get some feedback from that. But I'm also looking for feedback from, hey, worship was really great, or we'd like to see this or that or the other thing.
Well, I think you do get some online feedback during it, good sermon, this and that.
But the good sermon is just like,
yeah.
And last week it seemed very heartfelt.
I stayed awake.
Yeah.
Good
job. My fuzzy jammies didn't pull me back under.
As opposed to going out, shaking my hand, saying, "Hey,
good job."
I'm looking for things that this church wants to do, and
that I understand. You want your sermon to have touched somebody.
Well, I think with most of them, the more personal it is,
okay, the Spirit wasn't talking
the more
to me
people
for
feel it. When it's personal experiences and things like that they can relate to, as opposed to, here's the lesson. This is what the lesson means.
Yeah, and I try not to do that. I try, that it's not Sunday school for a sermon. Granted, I try to give a little bit of background because some things are
confusing. You need the context.
Sometimes you don't understand.
Women need to shut up and serve.
What's Jubilee?
Yeah.
So
it's a grocery store in the Midwest.
That's what I could not remember the grocery store in Union Bridge to save my life. It's a Jubilee.
Yeah. Or, whether John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt is
oh my God.
An earworm.
I appreciate it. Although still I was like, he's going to just put one name in between. Anywho, we've got 5 people online. I hope you all can hear us.
Yeah, let us know how the volume is. We're still kind of
us
checking through stuff.
We're just still us.
We're still us.
Things were a little hesitant to come on this morning. I think it's probably because it was too cold.
It was.
Gosh.
Everything was tough.
It was 10 when I got my truck this morning.
Diesel had icicle whiskers. By the time we got back from our walk this morning, I was like, I don't think you've ever had whisker sickles.
Oh, Diane says the sound is great.
Ooh.
Yay. Okay.
See, there's your feedback for the day.
And that's not actual feedback from the mics, which is nice. So, announcements. We've got a congregational meeting.
Do we have something on Sunday?
Yes, we do.
So Sunday, following worship, we have our annual congregational meeting where we will be exploring the new mission statement. Through Christ, we joyfully feed the body, mind, and spirit of all.
Look at that.
Already got it memorized. Let's hope it's approved.
Yeah, so I don't have to learn a new one. But we did get some positive comments from that last week that it actually ties into our new logo and things that truly St. Paul's does well. We have quite a few things in that feeding realm, and not just food-wise, but also spiritually. We try to.
But we are Lutheran, so we do like to feed you.
Yes,
we do. I'm on a diet.
Oh, yeah, aren't we all?
But that, and then the budget.
Constitution.
is always something to look at to make sure that we're stewarding this church the way we want to. And then the Constitution, we went through a pretty extensive rewrite of some of the things that needed updating. And thank you to Sheila and Betsy and Marcia for pouring through that and making that job a little less tedious for council and for me.
Yeah, you can see the changes. There's in the weekly Wednesday, there's the Constitution, but then there's like a different document that just has the changes, so you know what the changes were, where they were made. It was super handy reference, I thought, last week.
Absolutely.
Which helped us out last week because we were able to identify something that was worded a little bit differently than it was intended. So we were able to fix that this week and get those changes in.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit of the town hall before we have
Absolutely.
a congregational meeting, so we can
Yeah.
hash that out instead of having to do it during the meeting.
Right.
Yeah. And then wait for
And-
changes to be made.
And it may be not as, it may not have been as efficient as we wanted it to be last week because of whatever, but
But it still worked out.
it still works out, and it should make the meeting go a little more smoothly on Sunday.
So you can still join via Zoom. The link is also
Yep.
in the weekly. That's probably your best option of joining the meeting seamlessly, is just clicking on the link. It does work this week. We tested it out.
Yes.
And
If you're not in person.
if you're not in person, but you can attend in person,
We would love to see you in person.
and we still need 35.
We do. We need
Members.
35 people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep. And then next week is the weekend of wellness
yeah.
at St. Paul's.
Or wow. No.
Wow. We have the blood drive on Friday, the 4th.
Is that full yet?
We have
I think there's three
3
slots.
Power Reds, so I don't know if they would
They count as the
change
slots, yeah.
that to regular donations. But yeah, so we're pretty full. We're pretty full.
That's
It's
awesome.
pretty awesome.
Yeah. I think there's only those Power Reds
Yeah,
that are
yeah.
left.
Yeah, I was wondering if we can call
Actually,
and ask
I'll
them to change that
chat
to
with
just
Steve
regular, and
later.
'cause
Yeah.
some people might not be up for the
Power Red.
Take all of
Power
it?
Red. I can barely get through one.
Belinda's going to do that next time.
I'm not. I am not. I'm a 1 pint,
And
just
and
real
then
quick and get out of there so I can pass
on
out.
Saturday the 5th, we will have a vaccine clinic in the parish hall.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't been able to get your COVID vaccine or your second vaccine or your booster, or you have grandkids or children who've not,
They'll have Moderna and Pfizer, so 12
Yes.
and up. I think our brochure just said 12 and up.
yeah, 12 and up. So that runs from 9 to noon at in the parish hall. And then on Sunday after worship on the 6th, it actually starts at 1:30, not around.
Don't get it like the general. No, it starts at 1:30. Be here around 1.
We will have folks from Carroll Lutheran Village up in Westminster who are going to present a program to us on understanding dementia. And that's not just for caregivers, it's for family, it's for people who may even think that they're,
Seniors themselves.
right, that just
Any
need
age.
some more information.
Yep.
So we are going to record that, and we will have the PowerPoint presentation. We just have to figure out how we're going to package that out to people who aren't able to be there. So if you aren't able to be there and you would like us to get you the information, just shoot an email to Joanne, and we'll figure that out at some point.
Yeah, yeah. But come. I think it's going to be a great.
We have about 15 people signed up so far.
I forgot to sign up. There's a really super link, easy link for you to RSVP on the website. I just
Yes.
haven't done it. I'm actually the one to put the link up, but I still haven't RSVP'd.
It's just
But-
your name, a contact number in
Yep.
case something happens, and then how many people are coming with you.
Yeah.
Just so that we have an idea of spacing in the church and and whatnot.
So that will be here in the church on
Yep.
Sunday.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, that is a lot.
We got a lot going on.
We do.
And Lent's right around the corner, too.
That's for another day.
Good.
It
That's
is.
for another day.
Closer to spring.
Yeah.
Every step forward. Because I've had it with winter.
The 10 was pretty. That was
10.
pretty tough this morning. That was.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, I know.
I've been able to do my walks, and I mean,
I like to feel my face when I come back in from
I
my
like
walk.
to go outside without every inch of my skin covered.
I just wear a hat and gloves, really.
I had my big fuzzy Russian
big
hat this
babushka?
morning. Yeah, I was because it was like, oh, it was
I gotta get a
terrible.
picture of that.
I have plenty. I don't. I have a sock monkey hat. I got all kinds of hats. But anyway. Anywho,
Yeah. So, what are we doing today?
what are we doing today? I think we are on.
We are going to
page
finish up.
27.
Yes.
What page are we?
I was on 35.
Oh, 35.
That sounds better.
Yes. All right.
It's still a lot.
It is.
Yeah. 35,
The
35.
ELCA
Oh, yes.
social statement on criminal justice. And one of the basic statements that they made in this, and it's right at the bottom of 35, the primary factor in making policy decisions related to criminal justice must be principled, evidence-based practices at all levels of the criminal justice system. So I think, that's really what we're getting to. There are different things that the church has identified to include alternatives to incarceration, which I agree. I mean, there are, from spending 30 years in that realm, not everybody deserves to be hammered and sent to jail.
Or benefits from it.
Right.
Yeah,
You know.
if it's just a revolving circle, same stuff all the time, that's not helping anybody.
Right, and we're trying to find alternatives, trying to find different ways in which we can help those who have stumbled and fallen and need help to be picked up. We need to figure out ways, because spending $9 billion a year on incarceration, that's a lot of money that could be spent elsewhere.
I was kind of staggered by the numbers, and these are 12 years old because that's the last
So
time these.
they're probably worse.
So they're
would
probably
be the
worse.
guess.
They're probably worse. But the pretrial release programs for individuals that are awaiting trial in jail. Now, obviously, some people should not be re-released into society because
Right.
of the nature of their crimes. But 749,000 individuals were confined to jail for awaiting trial. And I'm like, wow, not all of them are murderers, right? So, or, serial rapists, or, like some really bad stuff. They could be there for a multitude of reasons, and do all of them necessarily need to be incarcerated, or can we look at home detention or work release programs or
But
something other than
I think a lot of
incarceration?
that came out of the war on drugs, because people didn't want to see that violence in their neighborhood. They didn't want drugs in their neighborhood. There was a hue and cry for, we don't want this, so make it so that doesn't happen.
Right.
And lawmakers heard that, and lawmakers made laws that fit that mold. And is that necessary?
Mostly because it's easy to get votes that way.
Yeah,
Also. That's an easy thing to,
you see
know.
over the last year the flip-flop in how law enforcement was treated. You see, a year ago June, it was like, get rid of all the police. We don't need any more police. And then all of a sudden, cities and towns were experiencing
The highest
highest crime rates
crime
ever.
rates ever.
So, how do you balance that out? And yeah, I think, especially when you look at, I'm not even going to touch January 6th because that was an abomination. But, you look at some of the demonstrations and violence and stuff like that. How do you work on that? And, being on the line firsthand. I saw it when we were doing Occupy DC, and people were like, "We need to leave these people alone. You need to leave these people." And then we saw, then as we were doing, compliance checks and whatever, you saw the filth, the squalor, the potential for disease that was paramount in these areas. I mean, we picked up a tent and 30 rats came running out of it. You found jars of whatever, and
Say waste products.
Waste products, and it was something that I would have never done in my life in career as a police. Would have been to invite somebody that we were enforcing the law against to videotape what we were doing, but I did. And that actually worked to our benefit because they were like, "Ew, that's gross, that's nasty." And it kind of bolstered that. Right.
Why you were enforcing the laws.
And it was a
instead of just being mean.
It was a measured approach too, and yes, at some point there was force used to be able to do things, but if you have the right people and have the right people trained to do the right thing, that force is measured and done. Measured and done. And not saying that we have to, but when we're trying to enforce the law that were put in place, then there is that measured step that we take.
But this statement is also calling for laws to be revised.
Absolutely.
As well. So like going back to, it trickles down, and the law enforcement's on the front line dealing with the repercussions of legislation that got somebody votes.
Right. I mean,
but it's not playing out for the benefit of society as one would have hoped or thought that it would. Get criminals off the street. You'd think that would solve the problem.
Right.
But if it's creating a different society of incarcerated people that are still, they're still in society, even if they're incarcerated.
Right.
That's not fixing the problem.
And the effects of that throughout their family and,
Right.
and people like that, where you may be creating more problems for society.
Exactly.
Taking
away parents or guardians.
Yeah, but on the flip side of that, there's also a consequence to things that you've
Absolutely.
done.
Right.
But
incarceration is saying, they're saying,
correct.
that's one of the
Yeah,
biggest sections right here, is that incarceration may not be
the solution.
the solution.
Yeah, and which is what, kind of, there were times where I was put in a position where we were, say during government shutdowns, where we had to close things because of the way that the law had come out. And then we have congressmen coming down, you need to open this, you need to do, and we're like, you need to change the law so that
you need to actually read it before you vote for it.
That's right. And
Start with that.
So
Don't get me started on that.
yeah.
Anyway.
But that's really, if you look at the sentencing guidelines and things like that, judges are held to a particular standard because of the way the rules of law have been put in place, and they have no leniency if they see, someone come in that truly, would benefit from some different kind of and not punishment, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so we've talked about much of this section here about, the war language that they're using with drug policies and how that needs.
Well, and I think
reform.
they've stepped away from that.
Yeah,
more
I mean,
now.
and that
This
was
was 1991, or when was this? Was
But-
it the 90s?
10
Or
was the
2010,
last
okay.
time this was updated
Okay.
with
But
statistics.
a lot of those drug laws, as I mentioned, were in response to violence in our towns, in our cities, in our country, associated with the drug crimes. So
Has that helped? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, that's another one of those situations where why are these people turning to selling drugs? Is that their only option because of the community they live in? Or is it just because it's quick and easy-ish?
Or was that something that they, didn't see any other option to
Right.
get out of their socioeconomic
Right.
situation, or, that's just what they saw, that's what they're doing. And this statement can't even begin to probably even address the use of the internet now in criminal enterprises, particularly
Criminals can
drug
really
trade.
be lazy now.
Well, yeah. I mean, anybody who's had their identity stolen or credit card stolen, there's very rarely justice for that. I mean,
Right.
you hope that that card is insured or whatever, and you don't have to go through all of that.
I mean,
but they're rarely even in the country.
You look at, like you said, working down on the mall and people coming to the mall from Podunk, USA, where they're used to leaving their car doors open and whatnot, and then everything that they own gets stolen, right?
Shocking.
And you want to commiserate with them, but you really have kind of say most of your stuff is gone.
Yeah, there's.
And we were fortunate at different times to be able to find different rings of those
Somebody
thieves.
tossed it in the river.
Someone
Yeah.
tosses it in the river, right?
But, cash is gone.
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy Drew.
Yeah.
But
Wish I had thought of it the night before, and then
or that Sunday.
that's what I'm
I
saying.
mean, Jay and I went down there, but we didn't.
They weren't washed up yet.
No.
Anyway,
So
good times.
yay. A lot of these next couple of pages talk about the racial disparities in crime, and
I think we've gone through a lot of that when we
We've talked about that too here
Yeah.
with, depending on your affluence, what kind of attorney you can
true, right?
provide or not provide for yourself. And that's wrong, but how do you fix that? Because
It's an overburdened system, and
Public
it's
defenders are,
a vicious cycle where how do we help this offender get proper representation when there's 40 other people vying for this person's time, and other than coming up with 400 new attorneys to be able to fit that bill,
I don't think we need more attorneys.
I don't either, but
well, maybe mediators.
sorry, Dan.
So, get to the there's mediation, there's other, again, alternatives to incarceration.
Right.
Somebody stole something, they don't necessarily need to serve time if they stole it because they're hungry, But that person's probably also not going to be able to afford anything but a public defender.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just again, as you say, vicious cycle.
Yep.
And I think we've even touched on a little bit about youth offenders and how that needs to be looked at. That's a tough topic even around here recently.
Yeah.
With a death and minor offenders, and you're like, what, were they old enough to know better?
Well,
I don't know.
But you look at the combined youth. Look at Magruder High School. Magruder High School down in Montgomery County. A kid shot another kid in the bathroom.
Oh.
And there were like 4 other kids in the bathroom that all they did was tweet it out. They didn't call 911. They didn't tell,
When was this?
last week or the week before.
Holy crap.
We're
It's all bad. I don't watch.
So how do you fix that mentality where I'm hanging out in the bathroom with Russ, someone else comes in and shoots Joe, and I'm sitting there going, hey, I'm going to get 1 million likes on this, as opposed to, hey, this kid could be hurt, and he's in critical condition.
Well, that makes me more concerned with what else are these kids seeing on a daily basis that this is just another thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
more of a systemic or societal problem than a, you know.
And
Where's the compassion? Where's the
Right.
empathy? Where's...
And I certainly agree that not every kid who gets arrested needs to go into incarcerated
adult detention
or any kind,
youth
youth
yeah.
detention either. I mean, there should be programs available for us to be able to do that, but so often they're not. So what do we do? Oh, okay.
Well, you have to have the time to look at the case and make a decision on what's the best situation. Is this a bad seed? Is this a frequent person here?
Right.
Does this one have a track record where it might be something worse, or is this somebody who made a mistake?
I mean,
And if we throw them in this youth detention center, that might be the end of them. It may, make this worse down the line.
right, and I've mentioned before this one kid that we probably arrested 15 times in a 2-month period for driving stolen cars. Is this a kid that needs to go somewhere and figure out, or how do you work with that, right?
Yeah, or do you, or are you sending them up the river to, like, oh, you got 15 cars in a 2-month period, we can set you up with, someone on the outside who's gonna help you use your talent in a way that will be profitable for everyone. Because in incarceration,
Repo Man.
That's where, no, I'm not talking about like a legitimate, I'm talking about chop shop kind of, thing, because when you're incarcerated, that's who your new peers are
Right.
other
Criminals. for
other
the most
criminals,
part,
whether
yeah.
or not you're mature enough to say, this was my lesson, I learned it, I'm sitting here in timeout for however long.
Right, and what really is,
And then what's going to happen when you get out? You've already missed that much of school.
well,
your
even if
chance
you are
of
in school.
Well, I thought we were talking about youth offenders. Well,
That-
right.
yes.
Yeah. If they're even going to school,
And what's their home life like? Probably not great,
right?
I would guess.
There should be
But that's one of the things, or a
Again,
couple of things that
that system's overburdened.
are in this statement about being able to find educational opportunities or
Mental health or whatever.
mental health, reintegration opportunities so that I'm not going back as soon as I get done doing what I'm doing here, I go back out to steal cars or I sell drugs or whatever. I actually see there's a better life. But I think it also comes down to, the family. How have you been brought up? Have you been brought up that this is how you're going to survive, or this is going to school and learning and being afforded different opportunities is the better way to be? It's hard to say.
And see, to me, in my head, having gone through all these other social statements, rolls into, okay, so he's stealing cars, he's gonna, he's seen the error of his ways, he's gonna go back to school and get a good paying job, and he gets out of high school or whatever, and he's got, the minimum wage job, which is not able to afford you anything. There's healthcare issues, it's like all of these other statements that we've talked about roll into this one. Like if
That's
we
why
can't,
nothing's simple.
if we can't do any of these other things, the education, the healthcare, the economic life, it's like we all just roll down to this one. This is where we're at.
Well, and you have to have
you know?
people, you have to have social workers and different psychologists to do the work
Determine.
with these people, and a lot of them get paid next to nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can't get people to go
So
into
like-
those unless they really, the people that care go in there and then they get thrown into the grist mill and
Yeah.
Well, it's
burn
like
out,
it's
you know.
like
Yeah, exactly.
a coworker of my friend Sue at where she works. There was a fight between students, and she tried to get in there and mediate it, and she got clocked in the head, and she's in critical condition in the hospital. So that kind of
Yeah.
also looks at.
Should there have been some other,
And there are other ways, but
and there are accidents that happen too.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
They're in any workplace, but you shouldn't have to.
But then
Fear for your life.
last night I was, for some reason I was watching TMZ. Never do, but And they had this video that was posted of this kid in a Rite Aid in New York City, just strolling through the store, putting stuff in his bag, and then out the door. And the security guard was just like, and why is that? Because the climate against law enforcement is
Well, it's
terrible,
also corporate policy most places.
Yes.
and you're right.
Yeah.
That's
I'd say most
exactly
corporate policy
just to
is,
let it go.
unless your life is endangered.
Because the
engage.
companies have been sued because of interactions that,
I
security.
think I have the solution.
Wow.
Thunderdome. It's time.
I've actually been to one of
The
those.
purge. No.
Oh.
Anyway, so then we're going to end privatization of prisons.
Yeah.
Are we
I think
I-
everybody
I
should
am-
be on board with that.
I am all about that because, the one statement,
Nobody should be making profit off
Yeah,
of this
I-
system. But there are.
so, right, when the state incarcerates someone as a prisoner, it brings upon itself special responsibilities for exercising custodial control. For this moral reason, the role of the state in the operation of prisons should not be supplanted by economic players who are guided primarily by profit or production. So, if I'm running a company, I want more,
The
more,
most
more.
efficient that it can be.
Well, not only that, but I want a continual flow of people
right,
in there.
yeah.
Right? I want my dollar per person or whatever, as opposed to how do I find a way that we minimize our prisons, so that, I give, Joe Schmo the opportunity, to do that. Like in the Shawshank Redemption, Red goes before the parole board several times over his life sentence or whatever he is, and then finally at the end he's like, I don't know what rehabilitation is. I've come here, my entire life has gone before me, and I have no idea of what that is because I was surviving here in prison.
Yeah. And that leads into the next part, the full reintegration of ex-offenders and rehabilitation, reentry transitional systems.
Yep. And it's
We'll
all
call
programming.
You a cab. That's what.
Right, well,
Maybe.
here's your
Here's
watch.
$11.
Here's your
your
stick of
cab
gum.
voucher.
Here's your
Yeah,
sunglasses.
and there you go.
Yeah. Have a nice day.
Make sure you check in with your parole officer. And again, it's a system overburdened by all of these other factors to get to even that part.
Right.
So
And I think what you
What's the
what you said a couple of weeks ago was, it's hearing the cries of everybody, trying to figure out how to, fix this cubby hole, fix this cubby hole, fix this cubby hole, and then fix that cubby hole. How do we do that? And a lot of it is just for us advocating and trying to push for change if we can.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you have to start with one thing, no matter what it is. And this, if you make one thing better, you're starting somewhere.
so are we skipping to page 47 with called to respond? Or
Well,
are you further than that?
I went to 40. I went to 48.
Okay.
40 last.
40 last, where the final thing is a quote from Micah chapter 6. For what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? And I think that's really
Micah drop.
Micah drop.
Nice. You get it this week.
Got it.
That was nice.
Ew, anyway,
And that's really where we're at.
because it's overwhelming. I mean, it's 48 pages of, this system is so broken. And
Right.
then you're like,
Yeah, this is a downer, for sure.
Well, I don't think it's going to be as much of a downer as next week.
and last but not least, next week then.
Next week, yeah, we talk about the death penalty. So we'll, yeah.
It's a bit shorter. I
Yeah,
went
It's-
through it
it's
today.
6 pages, so we'll put a link up so you guys can.
And there is a definitive side that the church takes in that.
Ah,
Very in boldface numerous times. So
all right. Well, that'll
there's
be
no
interesting.
there's
'cause
no
they're-
wishy-washiness on that
They're
one.
usually like, let's try to get a good balance here, but there's a stance then on this.
Absolutely.
Well then.
With
I did
reasons.
hear, speaking of, the judicial system, that one of the Supreme Court justices is expected
Justice
to
Breyer,
retire.
yeah.
And he was talking, one of his statements, previous interviews, blah, 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 was that the corporal punishment was something that's should no longer be a thing in our society. And I was like, haven't thought about that. So I guess we'll get into that interesting discussion next Thursday.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't use up any of your good material.
Hold it tight.
well, thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you
Yes.
Sunday at the annual meeting.
Yes. Service, 9:30, annual meeting. Right
Yeah, I'd love to see you in service too. It'd be great.
Yeah, you can start out the day.
Start out the day, start out the week.